So as we are getting started, I just wanted to welcome Venerable Sangye Khadro. My name is Dundrup. I'm the SPC here at Tupton Norberling, and just wanted to introduce and welcome Venerable again for another teaching. Venerable has been a critical part of our faculty for 3 years now, going on 3 years, just again and again. Uh, Being able to accept our invitations to lead our students. So we're so grateful that Venerable is able to do this for us again, and also for Module 2. So we're continuing on with both modules, and so Venerable Sangye Khadro is a senior monastic in our tradition. She is the author of How to Meditate, the same title as Module 2. So again, we're incredibly fortunate to have Venerable with us for this module and the next module. You can find Venerable Sangye Khadro at Sravasti Abbey when she's not teaching here. So thank you so much for your time and your expertise in guiding our students. We're really grateful.
Thank you. Thank you, Venerable Dundrup. Okay, so good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. So this course that we are starting tonight is called Mind and Its Potential, and it's the first module of a program called Discovering Buddhism. I think there's a total of 14 modules in this program that is taking you into various aspects of Buddhism, in particular the Tibetan tradition, in particular the Gelugpa tradition, the tradition of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And yeah, so in this particular module, we're going to be taking a look at the mind and learning more about the mind, which I always feel like I need to learn more about. It's hard to hear. I don't know I move the microphone closer to me. I guess I also need to talk louder. Is that better? Can everyone hear okay? Okay, yeah. So I'll just try to make an effort to speak louder. Right, so in this module, we're going to be looking at the mind or consciousness. And for me personally, this is a very interesting and also very meaningful topic. Mind is very, very important in Buddhism. It's also important in our lives. It's really the source of our experiences. And so it's important to know about the mind. And I'll be talking about this as we go along, particularly tonight. But I thought that before we jump in to the material for tonight, that we take a few minutes to get ourselves settled down. Some of you may have been running around today, busy with lots of different things and activities and people and meetings. And yeah, so your mind might be still kind of busy with other things. And so before listening to talks, teachings, doing meditation, and so on, it's good to take a few minutes to relax our body and our mind so that we can be more present with what we're doing. So I invite you to sit in a comfortable position. You can sit in a chair or cross-legged on the floor as you prefer. What is important in whatever position you adopt is to try to sit up straight, try to keep your back straight. That helps the mind to be more focused, clear. At the same time, it's good to be as relaxed as possible, to let go of any tightness, any tension you may have anywhere in your body. So one way you can do that, what I find helpful, is to just make a quick scan of your body. You can either go from the top of your head down through your body, or you might prefer to go from the bottom up, from your toes up to your crown. So just kind of quickly scan through your body and see if you notice tension, tightness anywhere in the body. And if you do, see if you can let go of the tension. You can imagine it melting and then flowing away, flowing out of you and disappearing in space or sinking down into the earth, whatever you find most helpful. So just take a few minutes to do that. Then let your attention rest on your breathing, the breath flowing in and out. So wherever you feel it most clearly, most strongly, put your attention there. And just try to be aware of each full inhalation of the breath and each full exhalation of the breath. One breath after another. And do this in a way that you're not controlling your breathing. You're just allowing the breath to flow in and out in a natural way, allowing your body to breathe on its own. And you're just observing the sensations you feel as the breath is flowing in and flowing out. And if a thought pops up or you get distracted by something else like a sound, as soon as you notice that your mind has gone away from the breath to something else, just disengage from that other object, come back to the breath. Before opening your eyes, see if you can bring into your mind, into your heart, the wish for benefit for yourself and others. For example, you could think something like how wonderful it would be if I and everyone else could be free of suffering and problems and confusion. And if we could all find genuine peace and happiness, that's just a suggestion, but something like that, some kind of positive aspiration for yourself as well as for others. And then connect that aspiration with what we're doing here tonight. You can think, may I learn something here tonight in this class that will help to increase the peace and happiness of myself and others and help to decrease our suffering. Do some more meditation a little later after I've talked about some of the points for tonight's class. So is someone doing the screen share? Made some slides for tonight. Someone going to put the screens up? Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is the title of our course, Mind and Its Potential. And the next slide is just gives a sort of overview of what we're going to be looking at. Starting tonight, so we'll look at the importance of mind or consciousness. So those two terms are equivalent in Buddhism. I know in some other traditions, there may be a difference between mind and consciousness, but here we're using those two terms interchangeably. In fact, in Tibetan language and other languages like Sanskrit, there's a lot of different terms for mind. And we won't go into all of them, but yeah, just know that the subject of mind, the topic of mind is quite extensive, quite complex. And I heard, I don't know, there's this saying that Eskimos have 20 different words for snow, different kinds of snow. So it's kind of similar. The Buddhists have, well, I don't know how many, but many, many different words for mind because, yeah, their knowledge and experience of the mind. Okay, then second point, we'll look at the nature and the characteristics of the mind. So what exactly is the mind according to Buddhism? And what characteristics does it have? So the real reason or importance of learning about the mind in Buddhism isn't just to have some intellectual knowledge that we can talk about with other people, but really to work on our mind. Because according to Buddhism, the mind is something that can be transformed, but we have to understand what the mind is to be able to transform it. Anyway, so then the third point, different types of mind. So mind isn't just one single thing that's always the same, but there are many different kinds of experiences within our mind. We won't look at all of them, but just a few that are important for this stage of the course. And then transforming our mind. That's, again, the real purpose in Buddhism of learning about the mind, is so that we can bring about a transformation of our mind. And what it means to transform our mind is within our mind, some of the aspects or different experiences in our mind are problematic. They're disturbing, painful. They cause us to be unhappy. They can also cause other people to be unhappy. So those are, in a general way, they're called afflictive emotions. So emotions that create suffering and problems. What happened? Yeah. So those include things like anger, greed, craving, jealousy, and so on. So we have those in our mind, and they create problems for ourselves and others. But it's possible for us to learn how to work on them, work on those afflictive emotions, manage them, so we can, instead of being under their control and kind of helplessly pulled along by our afflictive emotions, we can kind of get on top of them and manage them better. So we'll look at some methods for doing that. And then another aspect of transforming the mind is cultivating beneficial states of mind. Those include things like love, compassion, joy, and gratitude, generosity, wisdom, concentration. There's lots of beneficial states of mind explained in Buddhism. So those are things that we can cultivate, we can grow them, so we have them more. They are more and more part of our mind and our experience. So these are the things we're going to look at as we go through the course, which is 6 weeks. Okay. So let's start with the first point, which is the importance of mind. The next slide has a quotation from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. This is one of the readings that is part of this course. So I think you have access to various articles, short texts by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Lama Yeshe, and Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So among those is an article called "What is the Mind?" It's a talk that His Holiness gave. And so in that article, he says, there are 2 reasons why it is important to understand the nature of the mind. One is because there is an intimate connection between mind and karma. The other is that our state of mind plays a crucial role in our experiences of happiness and suffering. Okay, so the next couple of slides, I will go into those 2 reasons that His Holiness gives for why it's important to understand the mind. So mind and karma. So the word karma, in case some of you are new to Buddhism, the word karma, it's a Sanskrit word, and it means action. So basically, karma means that when we do actions, an imprint of our action is left on our mind, kind of like a seed, like planting a seed in the ground. And sometime later in the future, when the right causes and conditions come together, then that seed ripens and produces an experience that we have. So karma is sometimes called cause and effect, because when we do an action, that is the cause for effects or results that we ourselves will experience sometime later in the future. And in a very general way, we can talk about good karma and bad karma, or different terms are used. If you don't like good and bad, other alternate terms are wholesome and unwholesome, or skillful and unskillful, negative, positive. So you can choose which kind of terminology you're more comfortable with. But yeah, there are two main kinds of karma from the point of view of what will be the result, the outcome. So bad karma or unwholesome karma, these are actions that we do that bring about suffering, problems, difficulties. And then good karma or wholesome karma are those actions we do that result in happiness and good experiences. So this quotation, this is from the text called the Dhammapada, which is a collection of sayings by the Buddha. And so it's probably the most well-known text of the Buddha's teachings. I think there's many different translations in English and probably in other languages as well. So these two verses come right at the beginning of the Dhammapada, and they're talking about karma, even though the word karma doesn't actually appear, but basically that's what they're talking about. Because the first verse says, mind is the forerunner of all evil conditions. Mind is chief, and they are mind-made. If with an impure mind one speaks or acts, then pain follows one, even as the wheel follows the hoof of the ox. So at the Buddha's time, and still today, there are ox carts, wagons, carts that are pulled by ox and cows and so on. So if you have a cart that's hooked up to an animal like an ox, then in whichever direction the ox is walking, the wheel will follow without any choice or control. So Buddha often used images, analogies from everyday life, things that people would see around them to help them understand concepts that are kind of more abstract. So talking about the mind and talking about karma, these are things that are kind of abstract, not things we can see. They're not visible and tangible. So using some analogy that you can see can help people understand. So the Buddha is basically saying here that if we act or if we speak with an impure mind, so an impure mind would be, for example, anger or hatred, wanting to harm somebody, or greed, being, completely self-centered and consumed with desire, greed, craving, wanting things, never being satisfied with what we want, and so on. Those are just some examples of minds, states of mind that are impure, according to Buddhism. So whenever we speak or act motivated by one of those or other impure minds, the result will be pain, suffering, problems. Doesn't necessarily mean in the immediate sense. Sometimes that can happen. Sometimes you can, you have the results of karma occurring very soon after doing an action, but not always. Sometimes it can take a long time, many years, or even lifetimes before the results of your actions ripen. But yeah, and in case you wonder, well, did the Buddha invent karma? Is karma something invented by the Buddha? No. The Buddha, the Buddhist view is that the Buddha was once ordinary like ourselves. He was just an ordinary person who had problems and delusions, afflictions, but he had this strong motivation to find a way to be free of suffering so that he could help others to also become free of suffering. And so that's why he spent many years studying and meditating, mainly meditating, doing very strong, intensive practice of meditation, because he wanted to understand, where does suffering come from? What is the cause of suffering? What is the source of suffering? So what he discovered was that the source of suffering lies within our own mind, mainly these afflictive attitudes, what we sometimes called afflictions or delusions, or here they're called an impure mind. So these are states of mind that are deluded, disturbing, harmful, and they are the cause of suffering and problems. And so the Buddha, with this wisdom, this insight that he attained, his own mind became very clear, very pure, and he was able to free himself from all these afflictive states of mind and all the suffering that they cause. And he also gained incredible insight into, the workings of karma, not only for himself, but also for other people and other beings. So the Buddhist teachings on karma aren't something that he invented, created, but rather he gained insight. He saw how karma works through his meditative insight. And so he could see that, at one point in time, a person does a certain type of action, maybe a negative, harmful action like killing. Then later on, that person experiences misfortune as a result of that. Maybe they themselves are killed, or they have a really hard time, lots of problems as a result of that. So he was able to see the connection between an action that was done at one point in time and then experience that happened at a later point in time. So the Buddha simply revealed karma, the workings of karma as he himself saw them. And Buddha always said, don't just believe what I'm saying blindly, don't have blind faith, but investigate, check for yourself if something is true or not. And with karma, it's a little hard because most of us, we can't see the future. So we can't see that, what will happen as a result of the karma we create today. Yeah. So with some things, it's difficult for us to check for sure. Although Lama Yeshe used to say to us, you can actually see the workings of karma, even in one day. He said, for example, if you get up in the morning and you're in a bad mood, you're really grumpy and, unhappy, and everything looks bad. You don't like yourself, you don't like your life, you don't like your job, you don't like anything. And so when you're in that state of mind, and then you go into your day with that state of mind, going to work or going to school, meeting people and so on, what kind of experiences will you have? At work, at meetings with people and so on. So we've probably all had days like that. And it's like, having this negative state of mind, this, grumpy state of mind. And then the experiences we have, our interactions with people, and also the way we respond to things that happen to us. We're probably likely to get angry and just get more and more unhappy as the day goes on. On the other hand, there's days when we are in a really good state of mind. We wake up feeling happy. positive about ourselves and about the world, about our life, and so when we have that state of mind as we begin our day, then the kind of experiences we have and interactions with people will probably go much better. We'll probably, be happier. And even if something goes wrong, even if something doesn't work out the way we would like to, we probably don't get so upset about it. We just say, oh, never mind, no problem, doesn't disturb me. So that's something we can see in our experience. I'm sure we've all had lots of experiences of that depending on the state of mind we're in, whether we're in a really negative state of mind or in a positive state of mind, that will affect the kind of experiences we have, even in just one day. Yes, you said, that looking at that in our experience, we can get more understanding and more confidence in the teachings on karma. So basically, the teachings on karma is that our mind is the creator. It's not the world, other people, the government, our parents, who determine the kind of experiences we have, whether we're happy or unhappy, but rather it's mainly our own mind that determines whether we're happy or unhappy, whether we have good experiences or bad experiences. Yeah. So then the second verse is talking about good karma. Again, it starts the same way. Mind is the forerunner of all good conditions. Mind is chief, and they are mind made. If with a pure mind one speaks or acts, then happiness follows one, even as the shadow that never leaves. Okay, so a pure mind would be a positive state of mind, like love, loving kindness, caring about others, wanting them to be happy, compassion, wanting others to not suffer, wanting to do what we can to relieve the suffering of others, having faith in spiritual teachers, spiritual teachings that motivates us, inspires us to engage in spiritual practice and work on developing ourselves, transforming ourselves. So those are just some examples of positive states of mind, virtuous states of mind, pure minds. And so whenever we have a pure state of mind, a positive state of mind, and then we speak or act, the result of that, the karmic result, is happiness. Happiness. Good experiences will happen in the future. And this is, he uses a different analogy here of a shadow. So in the daytime, if the sun is out, we're walking around, then wherever we go, our shadow will follow us. It never goes in a different direction than we do. It always goes where we go. So in a similar way, then, we do positive things with a positive state of mind, then happiness will be the result of that. So this is one way we can see the importance of mind in terms of karma, because we're creating karma all the time, whether we know it or not. So even people who don't know about karma, who never heard about karma, they're still creating karma. And so they're creating the causes for results, for experiences they will have in the future. And so we are like, or rather our mind is like the creator of our experiences, depending on our state of mind, it motivates our actions, and that will determine whether we have happiness or we have suffering in the future. And so that's one way we can see how important mind is in terms of the karma we create. Okay, that's one of the 2 points mentioned by His Holiness. And the second one, he said that our state of mind plays a crucial role in our experiences of happiness and suffering. So, so mind and happiness versus suffering. So Tibetan teachers, Tibetan lamas, have a saying that they repeat again and again, something like, all sentient beings want happiness and all sentient beings do not want suffering. So they just take, that's like a given that everybody wants happiness and doesn't want to suffer. And there was one of the Mind and Life conferences. These are conferences between scientists of different disciplines, and also educators, philosophers, and so on, and the Dalai Lama and other lamas. So in one of the Mind Life conferences, His Holiness was talking about that. He said, everybody wants to be happy, nobody wants to suffer. There was one Russian woman, I forget what type of scientist she was, but she was on, one of the presenters of the at this conference, and originally from Russia, but I think was living in America. And she said something like she didn't agree with His Holiness, and she spoke about Russian people. I don't remember her exact words, what she said, but something like, for Russians, the kind of happiness, like in America, in America, I don't know, I think our culture is such that, we should look happy, we should show happiness, we should be like really always smiling and cheerful and excited like that, this zingy kind of happiness. So I think she was saying that, yeah, for Russian people and Russian culture, it's not like that. they don't, that isn't something that they try to do, is to appear to have this zingy kind of happiness. And I found a study that had been done about this, and it showed that, yeah, Russians sometimes they don't look very happy, but it's not that they aren't happy inside. They just don't like to show their feelings to people they don't know very well. So they may actually be happy, but outwardly they may look a little grumpy or unhappy or whatever. Anyway, I just thought that was interesting because, yeah, probably most people wouldn't challenge what the Dalai Lama says, but she did. But also, when the lamas say things like this, when they say all sentient beings want happiness, they're not necessarily talking about this whoopee zingy sort of excited happiness, but rather good feelings, good experiences, starting with having our basic needs fulfilled, like having food, having comfort, feeling safe. Okay. So this is something all sentient beings wish for. We all have stomachs. Well, those of us who do have stomachs, I should say, those of us who have stomachs, when we don't have food to eat, when our stomachs are empty and we don't have food, then we're not very happy. It's hard to be happy when you're hungry and don't have food. So when we do have food to fill our stomachs, then we feel good. We feel happy. And this is true for people. It's true for animals. Yeah, it's kind of obvious that, yeah, being able to have food brings happiness. And likewise, being comfortable, having a roof over our head, being treated nicely by other people, feeling kind of loved and cared for by others. So these are like basic needs that we have, and when they are fulfilled, we're happy. We feel good. We feel happy when we have those things. And if we don't have them, we don't have food, we don't have shelter, we don't have care, a feeling of being cared for by others, and we probably feel unhappy. It's hard to be happy. So when they say that everyone wants to be happy and nobody wants to suffer, they're talking about even the most basic needs that we have, like food and clothes. So anyway, that's something you can think about and check for yourself. But I agree. I don't have any trouble with this one. I think that everybody does want happiness in the sense of good experiences, the fulfillment of our needs, the fulfillment of our wishes. We want those things. In fact, almost everything we do, almost all the actions we do, the decisions that we make, the choices that we make are based on that, wanting to be happy, wanting to feel good. And the flip side of that is wanting to not suffer, not wanting to have bad experiences. So anyway, for Tibetans, this is a given, that everybody wants to be happy and nobody wants to suffer. But then where does happiness come from? Where does suffering come from? And according to Buddhism, our state of mind plays a crucial role in our experiences of happiness and suffering. So here's an example to illustrate this. Two people who are in the same situation, like being stuck in traffic, being in a traffic jam, they can have very different experiences. One person gets upset, angry, complains, and blames, even swearing. And, there's these cases, I think it's rare, but, sometimes, what do they call it? Road rage, right? People may have a gun in their car and they get so upset, angry, frustrated that they take out their gun and, shoot another driver. So definitely this is something that happens. Some people get very angry, very upset. So for that person, then their state of mind is not happy, is disturbed, unpeaceful, unhappy. Okay. Now there could be another person who's in the same traffic jam, but they have a different way of responding. They accept the situation. They don't get, overheated, angry, upset. They are able to stay calm, and they may use the time constructively. For example, they might listen to a podcast or what do you call these, audiobooks, or recite mantras. Okay, so there's things you can do when you're stuck in a traffic jam that are positive, beneficial, constructive, and you're able to keep your mind in a good state, not angry and frustrated. Okay, so even though these two people are in the same situation, but their way of responding, their way of reacting is very different, like opposite. And this isn't because of the traffic jam. You can't say, oh, it's the traffic jam that is the cause of whatever reaction the person has. It's not coming from outside, but it's coming from inside. It's coming from the person's mind. Okay. Whether they're angry and frustrated or they're calm and peaceful, that depends on their mind. And so the last point is, unhappiness and suffering are due to afflictive states of mind. So Buddhism talks a lot about this. We will be looking at this in the course later on. But I already mentioned a few examples of afflictive states of mind. Anger is probably the worst one because it can lead to violence. It leads to war, to terrorism, to murder, other kinds of violent crime. And so much suffering in the world happens as a result of anger, hatred, that particular state of mind. And even, we all get angry sometimes and we don't act it out. We don't go out and shoot people, kill people, or make war. But just having angry thoughts in our mind, those kind of thoughts running around in our mind, even if we don't express them, verbally or physically, but just having them running around in our mind. Yeah, if you check that state of mind, is this state of mind happy, peaceful? Is this a nice feeling to have? Is this a good way to be? Is this the way I want to be all the time? I think if you, look objectively at that that state of mind of anger, hopefully you'll agree. Yeah, it's not peaceful and happy. It's not a good state of mind. So that's one example of an afflictive state of mind. Another one is greed, craving, and that's where we want something, whether it's some object or some a relationship with a certain person or a certain experience. There's something we want really, really badly, and our mind is not at all peaceful and calm. It just keeps thinking again and again about this thing that we want, and how to get it. Lots of planning and scheming. And yeah, so if you can take a step back from that type of mental activity, hopefully you will also recognize that is not a peaceful and happy state of mind. It's disturbed, unpeaceful, dissatisfied. It's like the mind is unable to be happy, calm, peaceful, happy with what you have right now, because you're obsessed with having this other thing. If only I could have that. If only I could have a relationship with that person. If only I could go to that place. It's like, forward looking, looking outside, looking to the future, thinking, if only I had that, then I would be happy. So you're unable to be happy, content, peaceful with your present situation. You're dissatisfied with that, discontent with that. I want that. That will make me happy. So that's what's going on in the mind with greed and craving, desire. So that's another afflictive state of mind. It makes our mind disturbed, unpeaceful. And jealousy is another one. Jealousy, envy, arrogance. So those are, I think we all have moments of those experiences, and it's not too difficult to see how they disturb our mind. So, so when one or more of these afflictive states of mind is present, is happening inside of us, then we aren't really peaceful and happy. We can't be really happy and peaceful, no matter what's going on at the moment. So I think that's something we can see for ourselves. And when we are unhappy, we have problems. There's this tendency to point our fingers at someone or something outside of ourselves. Blaming. Yeah, my unhappiness is because of that person or that situation or that event. That is causing me to be unhappy. But if that was the case, if that was really true, then everybody else who is having the same experience should also be unhappy, like with the traffic jam. Yeah, if it really was the traffic jam that was the cause of the person's anger and frustration and unhappiness, then everybody else in the traffic jam would also experience it in the same way, would also be angry and frustrated. And that's not the case. So that shows it's not what's going on out there, but it's what's going on in here, inside of us. Yeah. So according to Buddhism, it's afflictive states of mind that are the main cause of unhappiness and suffering. But the good news is we can learn how to manage our mind, manage the afflictive states, so they don't harm our peace and happiness. So we can learn how to manage our mind. And even if we're in a difficult situation, we can remain calm and peaceful. I'll tell you a story that just popped up in my mind. Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who was the spiritual director of the FPMT that Thupten Norbo Ling is a member of. So Yeah, so this is his name, Zopa. The word Zopa actually means patience, patience. And he really was a model of patience. So one time long ago, back in the early 70s, when I was living at Kopan Monastery in Nepal, and I was a newly ordained nun, and there were about 15 or 20 of us Western monks and nuns living at Kopan. And at that point in time, the chief of police was the person who decided whether foreigners could stay in the country or had to get out. And he happened to be a Buddhist at that time. And so those of us who were monks and nuns were able to get visas to stay when other foreigners had to leave the country. So I was actually able to stay for 3 years without having to leave, which was quite unusual, thanks to this Buddhist chief of police. But one day we got this message that he wanted all of us to come down to his office. He wanted Rinpoche, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and all the Western monks and nuns who were living at Kopan. He wanted to see all of us at his office. And he told us to be there at 10 o'clock in the morning. So we had to go from Kopan to Kathmandu, which is, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes drive. And so we got there at 10 o'clock and we were asked to wait. And we waited and we waited and we waited and we waited. In the end, it was 4 hours. He kept us waiting for 4 hours. And I got pretty agitated, and I think other people did as well, partly because normally we have lunch at 12 o'clock. And so lunchtime came and went. And, we still didn't get to see the chief of police. We weren't given anything to eat or drink. So pretty hungry. But yeah, waiting for 4 hours until we got to see him. So I was I had a really hard time keeping my mind peaceful. But Lama Zopa Rinpoche was sitting there looking totally relaxed and calm, not the slightest bit of agitation or impatience. He was, saying mantras and talking to people. He just looked completely peaceful. So for me, that was such a great lesson, such a contrast between, my state of mind and his state of mind. And I really wanted to be like that because, it's not at all pleasant to not have patience and, get quickly agitated and impatient. So I really wanted to learn how to manage my mind, how to manage my anger. So I've learned a few things. And so actually some years ago, before my mother passed away, so this is going back, I guess about 12, 14 years. I accompanied my mother to the emergency room in the hospital because she wasn't feeling very well. And in the end, they actually found that she had stage 4 cancer. But anyway, we were in this emergency room and there were lots and lots of people there. And so we had to wait for a couple of hours before she was able to see the doctor. And she got kind of impatient, but partly inspired by Lama Zopa Rinpoche and other teachings that I've had. I was able to keep my mind calm and peaceful. I was, saying prayers and mantras. I was also looking at the people in the waiting room and generating compassion, meditating on compassion for them, doing Tonglen for them. So I was able to keep my mind busy doing things that were positive and, beneficial, constructive, and was able to avoid getting impatient. So that's like before and after. My early experience of not knowing how to keep my mind patient in Nepal, waiting to see the police chief. And then, many years later, waiting in the hospital to see the doctor. So that just shows it is possible to learn how to work with our mind, how to work with our emotions, so that we, even if we're in a challenging situation, we don't have to succumb to anger and impatience. Okay, so this is talking about the importance of the mind. So now let's look at what exactly is the mind, according to Buddhism. It's different than what might be understood in the West, although my understanding is there's no consensus among Western psychologists or scientists, philosophers, and so on. There's lots of different opinions about what the mind is, even if there is such a thing as mind. I guess there's some who deny it, but there's no agreement, no consensus about what the mind is. But in the Buddhist texts, there is an explanation of the mind. So the first bullet point here is a definition of mind. So this is in Tibetan texts, which are based on Indian classics, going, back to the Nalanda masters, the great Indian masters, whose texts were brought into Tibet, and then they were studied and further commentated on. So anyway, in these texts, the definition of mind that's given has these two words, clarity and awareness. Sometimes it's also clear and knowing. Depends on the translator, which English word they choose. So the first term, clarity or clear, that can have different meanings. The simplest meaning of clarity is that it's not physical. So mind is not a physical thing. Although, actually that's not so easy to understand, because most of the things that we work with, that we interact with, and so on, are physical. Yeah, like our bodies, our computers, our cars, our house, food, all of these things are physical. They're made of, molecules and atoms. They have physical properties, properties that can be seen with our eyes, that can be touched with our, fingers and so on. So most of the things we know and interact with are physical things. But mind, according to Buddhism, is not physical. It's not made of atoms, molecules, and so on. It doesn't have color. It doesn't have shape. It doesn't have tangibility. It can't be touched. So it can't be perceived by our senses. Now that's challenging, because we're not used to things that we can't see. We want to see. We want to put it under a microscope and look at it and study it. We want to subject it to the different kinds of instruments that scientists have to study things. But there's no instruments. Science has not come up with any instruments to study the mind. Now you may say, well, what about an MRI machine or these other kinds of machines that detect the brain waves? They can tell, like things going on in the brain. Well, they are observing the brain, activity in the brain. But mind, according to Buddhism, mind is not activity in the brain. Mind can influence our brain. There's an interaction, an interdependence between our mind and our brain and our body. Okay, the two things affect each other. So there is an interdependent relationship between mind and brain and body, but that doesn't mean the brain is the mind. It doesn't mean the activity in the brain is mental activity. I think there's still a lot of discussion about how the mind and the brain interact. But according to Buddhism, the mind itself is not the brain and is not something that can be perceived with any of our senses or any of our instruments. So that's one meaning of clarity. Another meaning of clarity in the Buddhist text is that the mind is sometimes it's compared to a clear mirror. The way that our mind perceives or knows things is similar to the way a mirror works, in the sense that if you have a clean, clear mirror, and then you put something in front of the mirror, a reflection of that object appears in the mirror. The mirror will take on a reflection of whatever is in front of it. So they say that the way that our mind perceives or knows objects is similar to that. It takes on a reflection of whatever object we are looking at or perceiving or thinking about. Now, I've always found that difficult to understand, but that's what they say. That's the way in which our mind knows an object, by taking on a reflection of it. And then there's a third meaning of clarity that is also quite nice, and that is that although we do have in our mind, we have afflictive emotions, like I was just talking about. We get angry, and we have, attachment, craving, jealousy, and so on. But those afflictive emotions are not permanent parts of our mind. They're not like things that will always be there in our mind and can never be cleared away. It is possible to remove all the afflictive emotions from the mind, and so that the mind is always in a state of peace and happiness and clarity. So it's like the nature, the real nature of our mind is clear, in the sense of not being one with the afflictive emotions. They can be cleared away. So there's different meanings of the term clarity or clear. And then the other term in the definition is awareness, or sometimes it's translated as knowing. So the meaning of that term, awareness, this is talking about the function of the mind. What does the mind do? So what it does is it knows or experiences or is aware of an object. So it said that mind always has an object. Oh, that's the last point. Mind always has an object. It's not possible for mind to exist without an object that is known, that is experienced, that the mind is aware of. So you always have these two things. There's mind, the knower, and then the object that is known. The object could be an object of our senses. We have 5 senses. So seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. So each of those 5 senses has its own objects. Seeing sees visual objects like colors and shapes. Hearing hears sounds. Smell odors. Taste tastes. And then our body, our tactile part of our experiences things like hot, cold, pain, comfort, hunger, and thirst, and so on. Okay, so there's always an object that is experienced by the mind. And we also have a 6th type of mind, which is called the mental consciousness. That includes all our thoughts, memories, emotions. So whenever we have a thought or a memory or an emotion, there's always an object of that. We're thinking about someone or something. We are remembering something, or we are feeling emotional about something. So there's always mind, the knower, the experiencer, and then some object that is known. You can never have just mind on its own without an object. That's what I've learned from my teachers. They might be different. Other teachers, other traditions might explain things differently, but this is in our tradition. And then the last two bullet points say, the mind always has an object, but it does not have to be fully conscious of its object. So what that means is that even when we are asleep or in a coma, though in Western language, we call that unconsciousness. The person is unconscious. So saying the person is unconscious when they're asleep or in a coma, maybe, it sounds as though they don't have consciousness, they don't have mind. But according to Buddhism, no, that's not true. So even the person who's in a state of deep sleep or in a coma, they still have mind, they still have consciousness. Something is happening in their mind, even if it's just darkness. Okay. So even in those states of sleep or coma, mind is still present, still active, still experiencing something. So that's the meaning of that. It doesn't have to be fully conscious of its object. Okay. So when a person comes out of their coma or they wake up, you ask them, well, what was going on? What was happening? And they might say, I don't know. I don't remember anything. Okay, but they were having experiences. So we always experience something, even when we're asleep or unconscious in a coma. Okay, so the mind is still there experiencing something, even if we're not fully conscious, fully aware of it. And then the last point, it doesn't have to understand its subject. So we can sometimes have experiences of an object that we don't understand. Like when you see something for the first time, something you have never seen before, and you don't know what it is, what its name is, what to call it. So, you still have mind awareness of an object, even if you don't understand it. So it isn't necessary for mind to always understand its object to be present, to be knowing its object. So I thought maybe it would help at this point to just stop and do a little bit of meditation on these ideas, try to apply them to our own experience. So once again, sit in a comfortable position. If you can, sit up straight, but still be relaxed. And if you're feeling tired, maybe you had a really busy day and you're kind of sleepy, tired, it might help to keep your eyes open just a little bit rather than closing them. Because when we close our eyes, that's sometimes like an invitation to go to sleep. So we do want to stay awake when we meditate. And a way to do that is keep the eyes open a little and have your gaze looking down onto whatever's in front of you, table or your lap. So that way there's light coming in, but you're not likely to see something that would distract your attention. So that's an aid to staying awake and alert during meditation. And spend a couple of minutes paying attention to your breath flowing in and out, as we did earlier at the beginning of the class. Just allow the body to breathe in a natural way without trying to control or change your breathing. Let the breath flow in and out naturally. And then with your mind, your awareness, just in a kind of light, relaxed way, just be aware. Pay attention to the breath as it's coming in and going out. And now, slowly and gently, move your awareness away from the breath to awareness itself. That part of you that is aware of things like sounds, maybe sounds you're aware of. And don't pay attention so much to the sounds, but rather to that which is aware of the sounds. Likewise, sensations in the body, like feeling warm or cold, having some ache or pain or itch, or just feeling comfortable. Again, try to be aware of that which is aware of those experiences. Don't pay so much attention to the experiences themselves, like the warmth or the coolness, but that which is aware of warmth, aware of coolness. Another kind of experience we have is thoughts or memories or emotions, feelings. So whenever any of those occur, then there's an object, like what we are thinking about, what we are remembering. But then there's the awareness, the mind that is thinking, the mind that is aware, that is remembering. So see if you can put your attention on that, just awareness itself, rather than the object of awareness. Don't worry if you find this difficult to do, because again, mind is not something physical, doesn't have any physical properties, so we can't see it or touch it. But we can know the mind just with the mind itself. Mind knowing mind, mind being aware of itself. And you may also want to contemplate how the mind is said to be like a mirror. Just as a mirror picks on a reflection of whatever is in front of it, our mind picks on a reflection or appears as a reflection of whatever object, like sounds sights, physical sensations, memories, and so on. You can return your awareness to the breath. Do that for a few moments. Feeling the sensations in your body as the breathing is coming in and going out. Breath is coming in and going out. Okay, so we have a little bit of time left. If anyone has a question you'd like to ask, you can unmute yourself and raise your hand. There's a hand raising button at the bottom of your screen somewhere.
Venerable, there is a question that someone put into the chat. I'll read it. It says, where can we find our homework meditations and readings? I don't know if you're aware of that. If not, I can answer it.
Sorry, where can we find our homework meditations and readings? Yeah, it's, I think, Venerable Dundrup, probably on the Tipton Norvaling website.
Yeah, it's right on the event page for today. There's a link, materials link.
Yeah, so this course is again part of Discovering Buddhism. So Discovering Buddhism has all these materials for each course, things to read. I don't think there's homework, just to do the readings. And yeah, whatever we're looking at in each class, it's good to contemplate that over the coming week. So for example, I would recommend that between now and next week that you continue exploring this, what we just meditated on, trying to be more aware of awareness, that part of you that is aware, and understand that when you're looking at something, for example, seeing an object, a visual object, there's that object, but within yourself is this awareness of the object, and that is the mind. So using your sensory experiences, your sense perceptions, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and tactile, what we feel with our body, as well as the experiences we have on a mental level, like memories and thoughts, fantasies, emotions. So those are another way that we know things and experience things. So at least sometimes, it's hard to do this all the time, but at least occasionally experiment with that and just try to be aware of the awareness, within yourself. And yeah, I guess we probably all have this sense that the mind is inside of us, that it's located somewhere inside of us. And then there's the world out there that we see and hear and touch and so on. Yeah, there's some truth to that. Yeah, we don't, our mind doesn't really go outside of us. It does sometimes, some people have this experience, like out of body experiences. I've never had that experience, so I don't know what that's like, but I think it happens when they're asleep and their body is lying there on the bed sleeping, but they have this sense of the mind going out and traveling around and having different experiences. So I don't know what that's like, but yeah, that would be an experience of the mind being outside of the body. But otherwise, our normal experience is our mind being within the body. Yeah, so that's something that you could just experiment with, try to become more aware of. I see, there's another question also from Bade. What happens to the mind at the time of full enlightenment? Does the mind still have an object? Yes. Yeah, so enlightened mind, I was going to talk about that, but we don't have time. But yeah, so according to Buddhism, got all fuzzy, every person's mind has the potential, the ability to reach the state of enlightenment, the state the Buddha attained. And so that's, the course is called Mind and Its Potential. So that's like the full potential, the highest potential of our mind is to become enlightened mind. But that is quite an extraordinary state. And I'm certainly not there, so I can't speak from experience. But it is said that enlightened mind, one of the, what do you call it, synonyms of enlightened mind is omniscient mind. So it said that the Buddhist mind is omniscient. What that means is a Buddhist mind is able to see everything, to experience everything that exists. So most of us, we can only look at one thing at a time, perceive one thing at a time. But a Buddhist mind is able to perceive everything at the same time, in every moment. And not only that, but a Buddha is able to see the object in its conventional way of existing, but also its ultimate nature, its true nature, which is emptiness of inherent existence. Yeah, that's like the highest way of understanding things. So Buddha is said to be fully receptive, fully aware of all phenomena that exist, plus their ultimate nature, their true nature, emptiness. So definitely enlightened mind has objects. Every object, everything that exists is the object of enlightened mind. Okay. Any other question? So this topic of mind is, I don't know, it's difficult, not easy to understand, but it's very worthwhile even to try to understand it as much as we can, because we do have mind. Mind is very much there, part of us all the time, every minute, every second. And depending on what's going on in our mind, whether, for example, there's anger or some other afflictive emotion, or if there's something positive like joy, love, then that determines whether we're happy or unhappy. It also affects our relationships, how we relate to others, how we relate to the world. So it's important to understand about mind. It doesn't mean we have to fully understand everything about the mind, but at least to know how to work with the mind, how to manage our mind. So we will be focusing more on that as we go along in the course. Okay, so I think we've come to the end of our time. If you do have questions that you maybe weren't able to formulate in this class, or they might come up between now and next week, you can email your questions to the center, right, to Venerable Dundrup, and then that, yeah, there's the email address. So, and then they can be forwarded to me, and I'll do my best to answer them next class. Okay, so next week we'll look at some of the other characteristics of the mind, what Buddhism says about the mind, and then go on to look at some of the different types of mind, different ways that we know things and experience things. Okay, so let's just take a few moments to end this class with the dedication of merit, positive energy. So coming together like this to learn about this topic of the mind with a good motivation, wanting to benefit ourselves and others. This is something that creates merit, positive energy, positive potential, positive happiness. So let's share this merit we have created with other people, other beings, wishing that it will help them to find genuine happiness and peace of mind and freedom from suffering, which mainly comes from confusion and disturbing emotions in their mind. And may they all discover these important points about the mind so that they can transform their minds, gain peace and happiness and freedom from suffering. Okay, so thank you for joining. Wish you all a good rest of the evening and see you next week.
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you.